have been involved in the criminalization of crimes against women. And this, of course, was an important achievement. The recognition of rape as a weapon of war, and also, therefore, as a form of genocide, according to the international humanitarian law, is obviously very significant. But for us, it is equally important to consider the consequences of such a form of representational justice. Do you understand representational justice? Meaning, many rapes may happen, but very few actors would be put on trial. So each trial of an individual, is meant to stand in for many. This form of justice is significantly different from the forms that we know better in the United States, where ostensibly one is punished for what you do yourself and not for how you are connected and represent others. Of course, we know this is complicated. But in the international tribunals, the process is different. Those who are targeted for prosecution are the leaders. And of course, they have committed many crimes. But there are many others. So this form of justice is representational. But it also has many other consequences. So, for example, the trials of the leaders come first. But there are hundreds of others awaiting trial for very long periods of time, in detention, under very extreme conditions. So the question which we are addressing, together with women involved in international prosecution, is whether or not this is the form of justice we want. We want the recognition of these violences. But we also want a transition to a less retributive form of justice, to a form of justice which repairs, to a form of justice which restores balance. This struggle internationally is also a struggle even domestically for us in the United States. I'm checking my time. It is incorporated even in our domestic laws. In our national laws. Nacionales. Sí. Nacionales, sí. For example, an act called the Violence Against Women Act. Which was the result of many activist struggles. And has been, in the last 20 years, the Violence Against Women Act. And okay. The act, which was designed to supposedly protect women, and we should investigate this ideology of protection. Maybe we can talk about this later. The notion that women always need to be protected, and what that means about how women are perceived. But I leave that for later. That they are protected from specific forms of violence. Some which are hyperbolically represented or overrepresented. Tipo pública.
Sobre.
Some which are exaggerated. Not exaggerated is not that. It's they are overrepresented. They, for example, there is a section of the act focused on female genital mutilation. Specifically as a result of a very complicated issue for mostly immigrant women. Mainly from Africa and the Middle East, where this particular practice, surgical practice, is represented as the most extreme violence and represented as out of character with the United States. There is some excellent work on this issue by a woman mentioned yesterday, but maybe you can write her name again, Isabel Gunning, which tries to balance the look at this violence. Again, as before, we want to recognize that there is violence, of course, often in this act. But that a larger context of cultural understanding has been disappeared. And so in a US law, the mention of this particular form of violence plays a very odd role. The mention of this particular act in a US law, it makes a very particular racial statement and cultural statement. Because many other forms of violence are not mentioned. They're not singled out. And there's an underrepresentation of other forms of violence. For example, sterilization. Or police violence. The Violence Against Women Act doesn't mention police violence. Okay? So, as in the international situation I was describing before, with international law, we also face the struggle inside the United States. Of organizing to contest the idea that only those forms of violence are of significance to women. And that what we need is a fortification of the police functions. Because one of the major consequences of the Violence Against Women Act is that many police departments were given additional funds. And as Angela already mentioned, we know there are many reasons why, as Black women and as other people, we would not want an increase in the funding and support of the police. So these are some of the many reasons why we're involved in this campaign.